everybody. The Lawn Gnome is here, and welcome to a very special beginning of a very special series to end off 2019 over here on my channel. But not only are we ending the year, we are also ending a decade this year. It's quite crazy to believe that this year will have marked the end of another decade in my life, as well as the start of the 10th year of my channel when 2020 comes around, which is absolutely insane. But today, we're starting off a very special year-end project, which is the best and the worst of the decade. This has some very interesting, humble beginnings. This actually began with a little series of notepad links on my Facebook page when I first discovered Facebook. Basically, I always liked to give people my attitude on what I thought were some of the best ideas in the world of popular culture, best film, best song, you know the drill. And ironically, those were the beginnings of what my channel would have become for going on 10 years. But I also did a series of the best of the decade when 2009 rolled around, and I've been putting these 4 specific lists together ever since 2010 actually started. Yes, I have no life, but luckily I belong to a community that feels the exact same way to a degree, and I'm very glad that this is not only going to be happening on my channel here on YouTube, but it's going to be a collaborative effort. Each of the 4 topics of discussion for the best and worst of the decade is going to feature a very special guest, and I am so excited for the first guest who is going to be joining me for this first installment, which is the best and worst of the decade in film. And that special guest is Taylor from page ScreenTaylor. Taylor, thank you so much for helping me. It's great to have you back.
Hi, Steve. I am so happy to be on. So excited. This was an interesting list to compile and think on because, wow, have my film taste changed this decade.
Yeah, I mean, this, like I said, was something that I have been working on for the last 10 years. And when I knew that this recording date was approaching, I was like, I gotta really go into this list and see, do I need to make any changes? But based on what I'm seeing here, I think I'm very satisfied with what I have. Now, just before we begin this discussion, ladies and gentlemen who will be watching, just because I say something is good or something is bad, and the same goes for Taylor, that is not the end-all, be-all. It is just an opinion. We are all allowed to have our opinions, and opinions don't necessarily mean facts. Look at what's happening in politics right now. That's a clear definition of what I mean right there. But anyway, we're here to talk about fun stuff. We're here to talk about film. So, Taylor, it's been 10 years, and you and I have seen a lot of movies these last 10 years.
We have, and part of what made this list tough was, guess what my favorite film was at the beginning of the decade, and you'll see why this was so hard for me.
I wouldn't even be able to tell you if I tried.
Twilight.
Oh my lord!
I was 13 at the beginning of the decade, which lets you know that my film tastes have definitely matured. So I am excited to get into this.
Yeah, well, also, you know, here's where I'm going to officially age myself, you know. 2010 rolls around, and I'm well into my late 20s. So let's just say that I definitely know what it's like when it comes to being a teenager, because you like certain things, and then when you get older, you just like say, wow. Because there are some times where I have been doing my recordings and reviewing all these movies over the last couple of years, even going to see some of the classic films and talking about stuff that I absolutely love, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit and the Indiana Jones trilogy / quadrilogy, because there are people out there that don't count The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which they should because it's fun. But when I take a look and see when I was a kid and I was dragging my mother and forcing her to take me to movies like Three Ninjas, and then I look back and see just how bad that movie is, I'm like, oh dear God, Mom, I am so sorry I made you do this. But Yeah, it's crazy, but I'm really excited to hear what you feel are going to be fitting these categories. So it's a series of questions. We're going to try and tackle a lot of different topics that are within film. But I think the most exciting thing is when we get to the end of these questions, we're going to be going into the future to what we both think might actually be the next big thing that will take over the entertainment world of film in the next decade. So let's begin with films in general. And we're going to start off with the Oscar bait, if you will, those movies that you always see nominated for Best Picture. So that, of course, is Best Dramatic Film. So, Taylor, I'd like you to go first because the guest should go first. What do you think was the best dramatic film of the last 10 years?
Okay, thank you so much, Steve. I am going with Gone Girl, directed by David Lynch. I loved this film. I saw it my freshman year in college, and it was one of the films that encouraged me to become a film minor. Beautiful movie, very relevant today, and how the media easily spins stories, how they create narratives. It's about marriage, which is so interesting. And without giving too much away, it has a shock ending that still, gets me every time I see it.
Well, I'm really glad that you chose Gone Girl because throughout the decade, that was one of my favorite movies. The year that it came out, I thought that it was the best movie of the year. And we're actually going to be ending the decade with a movie that's going to be showing us that exact same example in the Clint Eastwood film Richard Jewell, which is coming out this year as well in December. I'm very excited. I'm very excited to see it. Great cast, and as someone who's an Olympics nut, that's a movie that I am extremely intrigued to see the story for, because I remember when the bombing at Olympic Park in Atlanta happened in 1996. I was so engrossed in the Olympic Games, and that was an absolute shock to me. And whenever somebody mentions David Fincher, who happens to be my birthday buddy,
I said David Lynch.
Yeah, he's my birthday buddy, so you know, I'm really excited when someone ever mentions him. And yes, Gone Girl was definitely one of my favorites. But for me, I'm going to be reviewing this specific film on my channel next year because it's going to be the 10th anniversary of this film. But I actually think that the best dramatic film of the last 10 years was The Social Network.
Interesting.
Which, ironically, is also directed by David Fincher.
I love that. I love that. And I will admit, I haven't seen The Social Network because, as we've established at the beginning of the decade, I was not old enough to see it, and I never got around to seeing it.
Well, I personally loved this movie. And it's funny because when I saw it in theaters, I liked it, but I wasn't the biggest fan. But every single time I rewatched the film, because I'm a proud owner of The Social Network, it was also the reason why I became such a huge fan of Alan Sorkin, because I didn't watch the West Wing or anything like that before that. So I knew who he was, but I never really watched his work. But ever since I saw The Social Network, I just became a massive fan of Sorkin. And just the more I watch it, the way that the movie is filmed is just such a unique way of storytelling. And also, it's talking about a topic that is very new. That was what was so interesting, because like the fact they made a movie about the creation of Facebook, the story of Mark Zuckerberg, and Jesse Eisenberg is incredible in this film. It's also the first film that introduced us all to Armie Hammer, who is now one of the most well-known actors in Hollywood today. And as someone who just last year finally saw Call Me By Your Name, I want to see him in so many more films, because right now I heard that he is going to be Green Lantern in the DCEU, so I'm so excited to know that. But also, it was just a landmark achievement in filmmaking that year, and it also gave us the very first rock musician, or even to clarify, heavy metal musician. Trent Reznor, the brainchild of Nine Inch Nails, won an Oscar for the soundtrack. And he and Atticus Ross are constantly working on projects. They also did the soundtrack for Gone Girl. They also did a lot of other work with David Fincher. They did the soundtrack to The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Right now, these two guys are currently doing the soundtrack for the HBO show Watchmen. So a lot of momentous moments happened through this movie. Names were officially embedded in Hollywood, and directors who people knew were good. Like, not that many people really had seen Fight Club, but now when David Fincher's name is mentioned as a director for a film, people will rush to go see his latest film. And that's why I think The Social Network was a defining film, especially in the drama category. I highly recommend that you see it, because I think for something as dull as creation of social media, you will definitely see genius in how this movie turns it into something so momentous and important. And also, almost forgot, Justin Timberlake is incredible in this movie.
Wait, is he in it?
Yes, he plays one of the co-creators of Napster. He is incredible in this film. Absolutely incredible.
I didn't know that.
And also, Rooney Mara, one of her first roles was in The Social Network. So powerhouse people in this film.
I'm going to have to watch it now that I am old enough to watch a rated R movie.
There you go. So now let's get into a little bit more lighthearted stuff. What was your favorite comedic film of the last decade?
So this was a tough one. I had 3 down, and I had to go back every day and just chomp at it. But eventually, I came down to Lady Bird.
Ooh, I wouldn't even classify that as a comedy. Explain. I mean, I think it's more of a dramatic comedy, but if you think it's a comedy, that's good.
Yeah, I saw it as like a dramedy, but I think a lot of it leans on the comedy of it. And part of that is how relatable it is. Especially looking back, I was never like a troublesome teen. My mom and I didn't really butt heads, but there is a little bit of that frustration with your mother, this idea that like, I'm grown up, I can do what I want, and not always understanding that your mom may know more than you do. A lot of humor comes from that, a lot of the sniping and the fact that she is a stupid teenager that you kind of relate to. And I think a lot of the humor comes from that.
Well, I loved Lady Bird, don't get me wrong. And when it comes to the comedic parts of that movie, you know, Saoirse Ronan and Laurie Metcalf together are magic. They were just fantastic in that film. Loved the dynamic between the two of them. And everybody does laugh at that scene in the film that is also in the trailer where Laurie Metcalf says, you know, you go to City College, then you go to jail, then you go back to City College. Like, everybody loves that scene. It's just really funny. And then
she throws herself out of the car.
Yeah.
And I think one of the greatest parts of this comedy is that even though it's dated and that it takes place in the early 2000s, it's also sort of ageless. I always say comedy, a lot of people tend to agree that comedy is one of the hardest forms of media because it always ages. There's a reason we don't do minstrel shows now, even though they were the height of comedy in like the 1800s. It ages really quickly. And I think the thing about this, the humor used in Lady Bird, is that I don't think it's going to age. I think it's relatable to everyone. And 30 years from now, people can watch it and go, I still relate to the humor that comes from the interpersonal relationships.
Very good. All right. Well, for me, the best comedy of the decade was Bridesmaids, hands down.
Interesting.
I have been having such a hard time with comedies in the last couple of years because, especially with the unfortunate enveloping of PC culture in entertainment, it's so hard to try and be funny and not be offensive at the same time. And when you take a look at the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and you take a look at all of those great comedies, even a few from, you know, the early 2000s, like, you know, Old School or Wedding Crashers, there were some funny movies, but Bridesmaids was just one of those laugh out loud comedies. And what was such a landmark for that film was it was one of the first times that we ever got an outrageous comedy with an all-female led cast. We didn't have many of those.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I mean, take a look at all the people who were in that movie. I mean, you already had Kristen Wiig and Maya Rudolph, who we all knew at that point because of Saturday Night Live. But that was the movie that introduced the world to Melissa McCarthy. And she even got an Oscar nomination for her role in that movie, which was a role that I never thought was even Oscar worthy.
Yeah, it's a really interesting film. I will say it's not 100% my humor, but I do really like it when it's on. You know, it's not one of those films that I'll like put it and watch myself, but if it's on TV, I'll watch it and enjoy it. And I will say I really do love seeing a female-led comedy because I don't think they were really marketable until really recently.
Yeah, I mean, and it's quite surprising that it took that long for an all-female comedy, because it's not that they didn't have comedies that were predominantly cast led by females, because we did have Mean Girls in the early 2000s. Yeah. That was very popular, but we never had women in comedy doing what you would normally see guys do in comedy, like lewd humor, rude, crude, all the things that end with UDE. Like, we never saw a female-led cast do some of the things that typically men do on screen. So it pushed some boundaries.
Exactly, and I think that's why it stood out, because there are a lot of female-led comedies, Legally Blonde, Mean Girls, like you said, Clueless.
Absolutely, yeah,
but,
there you go.
Like, it tends to be more rom-commy, which is fine, but, you know, like you said, lewd and crude and rude.
Yeah, yep. Yeah. Lewd, crude, and totally inappropriate. That's what someone I knew once used to tell me. So, yeah, that's why, yeah, I just wish that Paul Feig could have taken that magic and used that in some of his future directed films, because unfortunately he never seemed to really recapture that magic. And he hasn't really been able to recapture the magic that he had with Melissa McCarthy. I've seen a lot of the movies that he directed with her in them, like Spy, dare I be a little controversial, even though it's not Ghostbusters 2016. He just doesn't seem to know how to use Melissa McCarthy since Bridesmaids. And it's sad. I think that the Happy Time Murders did a lot better with Melissa McCarthy than he's done since Bridesmaids. And it's kind of scary, but that's another topic for another time. So let's go into Best Sci-Fi Fantasy Film. Now, I didn't mention this to you when you were asking me questions, but I will let you know that it is allowed. It can be a film franchise if you want to incorporate more than just one film.
Well, I did consider doing that, but I did choose one film, and that's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Oh, very cool.
This, I loved both almost equally, but I think this one was just a little more emotional. The characters grew more, and it wasn't based solely on the comedy. There was a lot of heart to it. The last shot of the film, choosing to put it on Rocket Raccoon and not really Peter Quill, got me. And I think it has this perfect balance of humor and drama and all the science fiction adventure you want. And I love it. It's not just one of the best sci-fi fantasy films of the decade. It's one of my favorites, and in my opinion, one of the best science fiction and fantasy films.
It also has one of the best opening moments for a Marvel film. I love the opening sequence.
Yes, and the, what's that song called? The Come a Little Closer scene with Yondu and the Arrow. One of my favorite sequences in Marvel and all of film. Love it.
Yeah, I am not as big of a fan of that one as I am the first one. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the fact that they got Kurt Russell for that movie. That was just awesome.
Yes.
But I did still have a good time with Volume 2. I mean, like, I really liked the post-credit scenes, because I'm a comic book fan. First of all, not many people even knew that Guardians of the Galaxy have been around in comics since the late 1960s.
Yeah,
and
they've been around a long time.
And Yondu was one of the original Guardians of the Galaxy. So when Sylvester Stallone, whose character is mentioned as name, but they don't mention his superhero name because he is Starhawk, that group of people that he's talking to is the original lineup of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes, and I love that. I love that call out. I mean, I would love it
Yeah.
if we got a film with them in general.
Me too. I mean, I love the fact that Ving Rhames was asked to play Charlie 27. That was the big guy, like the big guy in the yellow suit. That's Charlie 27. Like that was just so cool. And Michael Rosenbaum as Martinez. Like I just thought that was such a great thing to do. And Sylvester Stallone as Starhawk. I mean, why can't we have those guys in a movie on their own?
Yeah, or even a prequel.
Yeah.
I don't know, something, if they can bring Michael Rooker back, that would be great, because I loved him as Yondu.
I would like to see if they would even throw in Major Victory, because he is actually the original leader of Guardians of the Galaxy. He's supposed to be like a long descendant of Captain America. So I'm really curious to see if they would actually do that. Yeah, for me, I'm not going to go with a fun fantasy sci-fi film. I went with a more serious one, and that's because of the fact that it was the start of something that I had been touting for many years on my channel as a film fan, especially as a science fiction fan. The best science fiction fantasy film for me of the last 10 years was Ex Machina. And I loved that movie so much because we had not been getting those true science fiction films that really make you think. You know, we had been lacking those movies for so long, but Ex Machina started something, because after that we got movies like Arrival. We got the long-awaited and better than the original, I might add, sequel to Blade Runner. I thought that Blade Runner 2049 was incredible. And we also got a movie that no one even knew existed called Upgrade, which was such an amazing science fiction thriller. But it was nice to just see, thanks to Ex Machina, science fiction films getting a brain put back into its head. And also, that was one of Oscar Isaac's first roles. That was also one of Alicia Vikander's first roles. Domhnall Gleeson is in this movie. It's also just those three people in that entire movie. But it's definitely got like a Stanley Kubrick vibe, if you will. Even though I'm not a Stanley Kubrick fan, I did love this movie. It was just a very unsettling film, but you couldn't stop watching it because it just piqued your curiosity. And also, as someone who loves the concept of artificial intelligence evolving, that's why I love that movie so much. I highly recommend Ex Machina if you haven't seen it.
I'll have to see it. That's another one of those movies that came out when I was still in my Twilight phase.
Well, this is one of the main reasons why I'm glad that we're doing this little collaboration here, because this gives us the opportunity to talk about movies if we hadn't seen them. I mean, I've seen all the movies you've mentioned, so that means I'm okay. But I'm
hoping to surprise you, but I don't think I will.
Well, listen, I am enjoying what you've already picked. I think that the movies that you've chosen are great films, no problem. But now let's get into a little bit more fun here. What was your favorite animated film of the last 10 years?
This is probably the hardest one other than comedy, and I had to narrow it down to two, and I literally just changed my answer.
Really?
Yes, I have to think about it long and hard. I'm going with Into the Spider-Verse.
Okay.
I loved this movie. I thought it was innovative. It was something that was bringing something brand new to comic book films that I hadn't seen before. I love Miles Morales as a character. I like how young and inexperienced he is. The animation is gorgeous.
It's very unique.
It's so unique.
So different.
It looks like a comic book.
Absolutely.
Things like the frame rates are different for each character. Like, I don't know if you know this, but the frame rate for Miles Morales is slightly slower than the one for Peter Parker because he's less experienced. He's slower than him. I thought bringing different animation styles within the same sequence, while not exactly new, was very nice to look at and interesting. It blew me away. I've seen it maybe 10 times. I'll see it 1,000 times more.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm really glad that it won the Best Animated Feature because, Disney pretty much had a stronghold on that Oscar. And, when a Disney film wins, when I know that a non-Disney film really should have won. Like, I remember the year that How to Train Your Dragon 2 was nominated for Best Animated Feature, and it lost to a Disney movie. And I was so angry because that movie was absolutely beautiful.
It's so good.
for me personally, I was not the biggest fan of Into the Spider-Verse, and I said it in my review. Maybe it was because of the fact that this was my first exposure to some of these characters, because I used to read a lot of comics when I was younger, and now I just got back into comics. So let me just say this. I love Miles Morales. I think he's an excellent character because obviously the fans love him too. And I did say in my review of Into the Spider-Verse that if the day comes where Tom Holland's Spider-Man passes the torch on to a live-action Miles Morales in the MCU, that would just be something really cool to see. But I guess the problem with me for Into the Spider-Verse was at some point in time, I thought it was just like too fast for me, and it was a little bit stale and repetitive when they kept doing those backstories. But I did like the post-credits scene because Spider-Man 2099 is a character from my youth. So I like the fact that he's going to be playing a big role in the sequel of the film.
Yeah, it is fast, and when we saw it, we were sitting right up on the screen, and it did give me a bit of a headache because there is so much moving around and like, there's a lot of colors.
It was, I swear to God, I thought I was going to have a seizure, and I'm not even epileptic.
I highly recommend maybe, because I do agree, maybe watching it from a distance on your TV is probably a lot better because there's a lot less flashing going on than in a theater. Loved it. Beautiful, beautiful film.
I mean, I will not discredit the film at all. I mean, I didn't even do that when I didn't even say I thought it was the best movie I ever saw. Like, I understand that there's going to be a ton of people that love this movie, and that's absolutely great. I love the fact that a comic book movie got this Academy Award. I was kind of rooting for Isle of Dogs that year because I love that movie so much. I'm not the biggest Wes Anderson fan, but Isle of Dogs was just such an amazing movie. I love stop motion animation. You know, that's just great. But the best animated film for me, it's Toy Story 3. Any movie that makes grown men cry in a crowded theater says something about that movie. As much as I love Zootopia, Toy Story 3, I think, was the best because, you know, Toy Story was a important movie. It's an iconic film right now. Knowing that they would make a sequel, nobody thought that it would surpass the original, but to an extent it does. So with the third one, where are you gonna go from there? You know, they did it. They gave us an amazing third installment, and that ending is just one for the record books. I mean, when an animated movie gets nominated for Best Picture, not just Best Animated Picture. And the best part was that was one of back-to-back years that Pixar got nominated for Best Picture because Up got nominated the year before, which is also a fantastic Disney Pixar film. But Toy Story 3 was just a stroke of brilliance. It's a beautifully emotional film. The cast is wonderful. Wrapping up the story was great. You know, I still think that they did good with Toy Story 4, but if they never made it, I don't think anybody would have lost sleep over it. But yeah, Toy Story 3 for me. Toy Story 3, best animated movie.
It's such a good movie. As someone who was never the biggest fan of Toy Story, I liked the first two movies fine, but I was never the biggest fan of them. I love Toy Story 3. I openly wept in the theater. Film. It was not pretty at all. Great film. Actually made me care about the toys.
Yeah.
And the part with Barbie and Ken.
Oh yeah. Michael
Keaton
steals that movie. I don't care what anybody says. Michael Keaton steals it as Ken. He is hilarious in that movie. Yeah, I mean, maybe they shouldn't have done Toy Story 4. Maybe they should have pulled a George Lucas and took the entire trilogy and just remastered them in computer animation and basically turned them all into what Toy Story 4 looks like. Because say what people will about Toy Story 4, the animation is incredible. Like, there are points in time where you're watching Toy Story 4 and you sometimes forget that you're watching an animated movie.
Yeah, that little scene with the cat stretching, like
the
that
rain,
got me.
And the rain at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too realistic. It's kind of scary at some point. So the next topic is Best Film Saga. You know, I'm just going to say this right off the bat. If you say the MCU, I will not be upset about that at all.
Well, you got me. I went with the Avengers.
There you go.
Primarily for how surprisingly fantastic Endgame was. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
the first movie got me into superhero movies. Before then, I think the only ones I watched were the Hellboy movies and the Ghost
Ooh.
Rider movies.
Okay, I will say the Hellboy movies are great. Guillermo del Toro is fantastic as a director, and Seth MacFarlane is great in the second film.
Yes, I 100% agree with that.
I love Ron Perlman as well as Hellboy. It's just a great overall. I wish they would have just made Hellboy 3 and not that recent remake with David Harbour, because I heard it was terrible.
I didn't even see it. The first two are so near and dear to my heart, and other than that, I thought comic book movies weren't really my thing. I thought the Fantastic Four films were like so bad it's good, so I didn't mind those. Avengers, the first one, taught me that comic book films could be really good. And I mean standard comic book films, not like, the Hellboy, they're a little bit different from what you would expect out of comic book films. But the standard ones with superheroes, they can be good and interesting and funny. Like, I was surprised by how hard I laughed by the first one, or with the first one. I liked Age of Ultron. I know a lot of people didn't.
It's a lot of filler, but it's got its moments.
I really enjoyed it. Then there was Avengers Infinity War, really good. The ending got me. Like, I knew in my mind that this Thanos snap wasn't real. They had already ordered Black Panther 2. They weren't going to get rid of everyone.
Yeah, but you know something? Like, I go back to the fact that I am a comic book reader. If people actually believe that was the end of some of these heroes, I'm like, you don't know comic book worlds. Exactly. I don't know how many times Wolverine has died.
Exactly. And even still, like, they had ordered Spider-Man Far From Home, and Black Panther had just been a huge success. They weren't going to get rid of him. Mm-hmm. So even though I knew that, it still got me because I had gotten attached to all of the characters.
Of course.
And then Avengers Endgame, something that introduced time travel. I don't like time travel stories. I think they're too complicated. I don't particularly care for them. I love this time travel story. And I really like that they were just like, ignore all of don't think about it. We're just going back in time. It's a time heist. And I thought that was incredibly clever. The fact that all of the deaths, for the most part, there was one in Infinity War there, but the deaths felt real. They impacted me. I don't know. It was just fantastic. It blew me away.
Right. Look, the MCU has changed the film industry forever. They basically, before that, because you were young, you obviously were too young to see the Dark Knight trilogy. But yes, that was basically the beginning of people realizing that comic book movies don't need to be these B underground films. They can be the big blockbusters that the pages say that they can be. And pretty much, Kevin Feige and Marvel and Disney, they pretty much did something in film that had never been done before. It was a risk that they took, but it read like a comic book saga. It was great. I can watch the MCU movies, even the bad ones, because they're all crucial to the story. So they're and the casts that they've grabbed, all the famous faces that have played these characters. And I'll tell you this right now, I saw the trailer for Black Widow. I am excited.
Okay, I haven't seen it yet. I was very hesitant, but I'm going to...
I'm saying this. If Black Widow is as good as the trailers are making it out to be, Phase 4 is going to be good. I'm excited.
Okay,
so
good.
The best film saga, guys, you can debate with me, but I look at this saga near and dear to my heart because this was also the time when I was actually getting back into serious reading, and I thought that the best film saga was The Hunger Games. And maybe it's because of the fact that the two Mockingjay films are so much better than the book, because I hate the Mockingjay book. I know that they tweaked a couple of things, but I also appreciated the very accurate depictions based on the pages of the book. I thought that the casting that they got for these films was great. I mean, because of this series, we now know who Jennifer Lawrence is. I mean, she has become a very famous face, but ironically, we're going to get to her a little bit later on in this little thing. I'm just putting it out as a little spoiler right now, but, I loved those books. But when I finished Mockingjay, I wanted to throw my book across the room because I hated it. I hated that. And I just said to myself, if they're going to turn these into movies, you know, maybe we'll finally get what we need to see from Mockingjay, because the problem was Susan Collins is very bad at visuals in the pages of her book. She's no Brandon Sanderson. I'm going to say that right now. But she is not good with visuals. You had to see some of these moments to appreciate them so much more. And I believe that the films did it justice. Now, did they have to split Mockingjay into 2 films? I don't think so. But, you know, another movie that came out at the beginning of this decade was the second part of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. That was a movie that you could split into 2 because everything was relevant, and unless you wanted a 5-hour Harry Potter movie, you had to split it up. But the fact that all of these movie franchises like Twilight and this and almost the Divergent series, they split up the last one for the sake of higher money at the box office. Obviously, that was pretty much hit or miss after Harry Potter, and more so misses than hits.
Exactly. And I definitely agree with you. The Hunger Games was another one I considered. The Mockingjay's part 1 and 2, it's okay. I think it's better than the book. The book, I actually did throw my book across my room when I read it, but the first 2 films, and Catching Fire especially.
Yeah, like, Catching Fire is a great book and a great film.
Yeah, and that's the one that made me realize Suzanne Collins wasn't great at descriptions. With the first Hunger Games, she set a forest, and I was like, okay, well, I can imagine my own forest. That's not hard. But with the second one, it's so visually interesting, so like great to look at. I think the acting is spectacular.
Right.
It's a good franchise, and I still watch the movies to this day.
Yeah, I have been meaning to actually reread the books and rewatch the films. I really should, because I've seen them all in theaters and I really did enjoy them. I mean, a lot of people were a little bit upset with the first one because it was very shaky cam, but I also understand why they did what they did, because it was sort of supposed to show you, like, remember, this is a reality television show, so let's use those reality cameras. But when Francis Lawrence took over and stopped the speedy cam and shaky cam, it just was easier to tolerate on the big screen. But they were great. I thought that they were very good films. Yeah. Okay, so who do you think was the best director of the last 10 years?
Okay, so this is tough for me because I realized recently that I am not someone who follows directors. If it looks good, it looks good and I'll watch it. And it's also hard because I was really young for the first half of the decade. So I'm going with one that has 2 really good films that I've seen and one that I am excited to see more from, and that's Taika Waititi.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen What We Do in the Shadows. Have you?
No, I have not.
So fantastic. If you haven't seen it, it's a mockumentary following, I believe, 3 or 4 vampires in modern day New Zealand.
Yeah, I've actually heard about it.
So funny. It's absolutely brilliant. He also stars in it, and I think it's such a simple film, but made me laugh out loud. It's creative. It's brilliant. It's so adorable. And then Thor Ragnarok was one of my favorite MCU films. I think he took a franchise or I guess a film trilogy that I personally didn't like. I hated the first 2 Thor movies because I think when you have a concept, Vikings in space, and you turn it into something dark and Shakespearean, it does not work. He really embraced this sort of absurdity of the Thor franchise. It's weird, it's bizarre, it's kind of stupid, and he really just sort of fell into that, and I think made Thor much more likable, made Loki much more likable, made the world a lot more bright and colorful, and I think introduced a great villain, and it has a really great theme and allegory in the film about colonialism and, you know, dealing with your country's history and past. So I love it.
Yeah, all right. I mean, and I know a lot of people have really good things to say right now about Jojo Rabbit. So.
I really want to see it.
Yeah. I was like saying to myself, I'm looking at my list and I'm saying, should I have gone with Christopher Nolan? And then I said to myself, no, because of the fact that except for Inception, all of Christopher Nolan's landmark films came the decade before. So yeah. I am going with one of the new up-and-comers, and that is Denis Villeneuve, because Denis Villeneuve gave me 2 films that I mentioned earlier. He gave me Arrival, and he
Oh
gave me
my
Blade Runner 2049.
God.
Two
Arrival's fantastic.
incredible science fiction films. And we're going to bring him up later because he's about to do another film that, if it is successful, could spark a massive franchise. And quite frankly, if he's behind it, I want that to happen. I think that he gave me those science fiction films that we have been lacking for so many years. He knows how to work the atmosphere. It's just like a movie like Blade Runner 2049, which really could be the most boring thing you ever watch. He just gives me that atmosphere. He just lures me into this film, and I am just with it from beginning to end and just loving every minute of what I am watching, even though it is possibly one of the slowest of slow burns. Same thing with Arrival. It's not
Yeah.
a fast-paced, edge-of-your-seat film, but it's brilliant. It sucks you in right away.
Yeah, it's good. I absolutely loved Arrival. So
Yeah.
I agree with you. I'm really interested to see what else he does.
Yeah, I'm really, we'll talk about that a little bit later, like I said. So now let's get into a couple more of the people that we see in these movies. Who do you think was the best actor of the last 10 years?
Okay, this one took me by surprise, but when I looked at everything he had been in, I was like, okay, I guess he was the best actor, in my opinion. I'm going to go with Leonardo DiCaprio. He
Okay.
finally won his Oscar this decade. I haven't seen Revenant. I don't think I will, but he was in The Great Gatsby, which I loved. I thought he was the perfect Gatsby.
I'm not a Baz Luhrmann fan, but I liked The Great Gatsby. I did.
Yeah. I think it perfectly embraced the vibe of the book, the feel of the book, and Leo DiCaprio as Gatsby just captivated me. The Wolf of Wall Street, a film that I really enjoyed but will never watch again.
Which is the movie that he should have gotten the Oscar for. I think that even though he did a great job in The Revenant, he was a powerhouse in Wolf of Wall Street. A powerhouse.
I 100% agree with that. I loved him in that. And Django Unchained, which he terrified me in that movie.
Man, when I heard that Quentin Tarantino was putting Leonardo DiCaprio in one of his movies, I was like, something magical is gonna happen here. Oh man, he is one of the, I have said this to so many people because I've had so many conversations about Quentin Tarantino. Django Unchained is his best film to date. The more I watch it, it gets better.
It's really good, and I think his character in Django Unchained is so vile. He does it so well. I don't know if you remember the scene where he breaks the glass and he cuts his hand, and he actually did.
Yes, he did.
That is commitment, and the way he plays it off is just amazing.
Yeah, he is, and yes, I will agree with you. I remember when I first saw him on an old TV show called Growing Pains. That was the first time I ever saw him. And yes, after Titanic, I hated his guts. I thought he was such a pretty boy. I didn't care for him. But then Martin Scorsese puts him in The Departed. And my whole attitude about him changed. And you want to know something? I think Hollywood's entire attitude changed about Leonardo DiCaprio, because then look at the movies that he had been in. Look at the directors that worked with him. Christopher Nolan worked with him in Inception. Martin Scorsese brought him back for more movies. He was in Shutter Island and The Wolf of Wall Street. Quentin Tarantino picks him up because he was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood this year.
Yeah.
So he has... And getting his Academy Award working with Iñárritu, I can't remember his first name, but the director of Birdman and The Revenant, just showed us that Leonardo DiCaprio is not a pretty boy. This is an actor.
Exactly. And honestly, I think everything except Revenant he was a lot better in. I mean, I haven't seen Revenant, but I think he also should have gotten the Oscar for Great Gatsby. I thought he did excellent as Gatsby.
Well, I think you will actually be surprised, but I think you'll be extremely satisfied with my choice. Because it's a similar story about a guy who not that many people knew about, not many people thought he was going to go anywhere, but now he's one of the most talked about and one of the most loved actors in Hollywood today. Chris Pratt.
Okay, interesting. I knew you were going to go with someone from the MCU.
Definitely Chris Pratt, because Chris Pratt is just flat out entertaining. He's full of charm. He hits the comedy perfectly in every role that he's in. And I love him as Star-Lord. He is great. And I'm so excited for the new Disney Pixar movie Onward because he's in it. I'm like, a Disney Pixar movie with Spider-Man and Star-Lord going on an adventure together. How can you lose? Like, I love him. I mean, like, the new Jurassic Park movies are nothing special, but he's fun in them. I like him in those movies.
Okay, you know what? That's a really good pick. I'm really happy you chose him.
I had a feeling that you would because, like, he first pretty much came, and the other thing was, you know, he started out in Parks and Recreation. He was this chubby, fun-loving guy, but then he shows up in Guardians of the Galaxy and he's slimmed down. He's a sex symbol. Like, he's gone through a complete 180 transformation, and now he's one of the hottest actors to work with in Hollywood today.
Exactly. Honestly, I 100% agree with your choice.
Okay, so Best Actress.
Okay, Saoirse Ronan.
I was thinking about her on my picks, believe it or not.
Yeah, I think she's really come into her own as an actress. I don't know if you've seen Atonement. It came out in like 2005.
I did not, but I know about it.
Yeah, so she was really young when she did that, and I remember seeing that movie as a naughty little girl, but as a teenager and going, she's really good. It's hard to find a good child actress, and she was fantastic. And
she's very versatile.
She is. So I loved her in the Grand Budapest Hotel, even though she didn't really do anything.
That movie is so fun to watch. It's so loopy, but I love it.
To date, it's the only Wes Anderson film I've actively enjoyed. I think it's great. I liked her in the Grand Budapest Hotel. I don't know if you've seen Brooklyn.
I did. I wasn't the biggest fan, but I liked her performance in it.
Yeah, I mean, it's 100% a me film. Historical romance, nice dresses, all that stuff. It's 100% me. And I thought she was really good in that movie. Her performance was beautiful. The way she played off of her, I don't know the actor's name, but off of her love interest, wonderful. And of course, we've got Lady Bird, where she, like her transformation into just a bratty teen, and the fact that they made her look like a teenager, and the way she really encompassed that was fantastic. I am so excited to see where she goes from here, and I'm excited to see more from her. Yeah.
Well, I'm going with an actress who is definitely a lot older than Saoirse Ronan, but is definitely out of the same vein because she is extremely versatile and she can play almost any role in any kind of movie. And she has wowed me this last decade, and that is the one and only Cate Blanchett.
Oh my God, I love her.
She has done everything from dramatic Oscar-worthy roles to comedic family roles to being a villain in the MCU. Like, she has done it all. Her role in Ocean's 8 is hilarious. I love everything that I've seen her in. I just recently watched A House with a Clock in Its Walls. Ooh. I never would have imagined her in a family-oriented horror film along working with Jack Black. But the two of them together, one of the few things that she is great at is she can work with anybody. She just knows how to work with anybody that she's working with. And every role that she is in, I just love her. She is wonderful.
Okay, you know what? I definitely agree with you. Her range is fantastic, and especially, like, you can tell she's having fun in every role she plays. Like, when she was playing Hela in Thor Ragnarok, she was having the time of her life.
Oh, yeah, you can totally tell. You can totally tell. Yeah, she definitely wowed me. I mean, like, I first heard about her when she was up for the Academy Award in Elizabeth. And obviously...
She's good in that.
And obviously, you know, she was Galadriel in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, so that was basically where I first got exposed to her talents. But ever since then, you know, every movie that she has been in that I have seen, I have loved her, and I want to see her in more. I really, really do. She's fantastic. So who do you think in the last decade had their true best breakthrough as an actor or actress?
Okay, so this is going to maybe take you aback a bit.
Okay.
Zac Efron.
Okay.
I am really surprised in how he's grown. I always call him Hollywood's frat boy. He started off on the Disney Channel with High School Musical. I used to think he was really attractive. I still do. But now he he's done a lot of comedy roles, Neighbors, Baywatch, but what I think really shone for me is, as much as I didn't like The Greatest Showman, him in The Greatest Showman, fantastic. And his role as Ted Bundy in Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile, which I just saw, and my God, he terrified me. This is the same guy who did Get Your Head in the Game and all of the High School Musical songs, and I truly believed he was Ted Bundy. He is so good in that film.
Yeah, I've seen him in The Greatest Showman, and yeah, you know something? Baywatch is one of those horribly bad movies. It's hilarious and awesome, and you know, he and The Rock and Dwayne Johnson, or The Rock, whatever you guys, whatever everybody wants to call him these days, Dwayne Johnson and Zac Efron were fantastic together in that movie, even though that movie is absolutely horrible. But yeah, he's definitely proven himself. I'm glad that he has, you know?
Yeah.
So so for me, he was starting to come out. I mean, we all knew this specific actor. You can go all the way back to the early 90s with a little movie called Angels in the Outfield. But as the decade was turning, we got a certain movie in 2009 called 500 Days of Summer. And that was where we all got introduced in film, more so, to Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I think that this decade was a big decade for him because he was in so many great movies. He was even in some movies that nobody even noticed, like Don John with Scarlett Johansson. He was in he did a lot of work on the Christopher Nolan films. He was in Steven Spielberg's Lincoln. He really is one of the best young actors in Hollywood today. And it's a little bit upsetting that in the last couple of years of this decade, he hasn't really been around. I mean, when I first started my YouTube channel, when I saw 50/50, my heart just stopped. I was like, holy cow. This is like one of the best performances I've ever seen Joseph Gordon-Levitt do. And I'm a huge fan of 500 Days of Summer as well. But I'm really wondering where he is right now because we haven't really seen him in many movies in the last couple of years of this decade. He was also in Robert Zemeckis' The Walk, where he played the person who did a walk between the Twin Towers on like a big rope sort of thing, like tightrope walker. He was one of the biggest actors of this decade, and I really hope he comes back to do a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen much of him in the last decade, but I do agree 500 Days of Summer is fantastic, and I do have a crush on Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I think he's really cute.
Yeah, so. I mean, like I said, he's definitely his most noticeable performances of the decade were definitely 50/50, Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio, another big performance that he had in 2010. He just so many movies that he was in that not that many people knew. And like I said, I really hope that he is going to do more in the coming years because I really do appreciate him as an actor. So who do you think this past decade had the biggest comeback?
So this is going to be an interesting one because I'm not sure if this entirely counts, but I'm going to go with someone who I was introduced through a sort of sketch comedy show, had a great performance in a film, and then sort of moved onto a really well-known and well-produced Netflix series and did incredibly well there. And I'm going with Olivia Colman.
Oh, okay, yeah. Didn't she just win an Oscar?
She just won an Oscar for The Favorite, and she was fantastic in it. So I watched her in that Mitchell and Webb look or that Mitchell and Webb show. I think she was in both. I watched her in Peep Show, where she was, for the most part, a comedian, and she's really good at it. And then I know she was in like Broadchurch and so on, but she kind of fell off of my radar, and I don't think a lot of people knew her. And then she plays Queen Anne in The Favorite and wins an Oscar. And I don't know if you've seen The Favorite, but
no, I wanted to, but it wasn't really playing in any theaters near me.
Yeah,
but that movie looked really good. That movie looked really good.
It was really good, and she surprised me, and I loved it. She moved on to play Queen Elizabeth in The Crown. She's just playing a bunch of queens now. That's her job now. And just seeing how she's, I don't want to say grown because I don't want to act like comedy takes a lot less work than drama, but seeing as how she's moved into more prolific roles, I think is really nice. And seeing her become known not as a comedian, but as, you know, a dramatic actress.
You know, speaking of queens in films and stuff, because you already did mention Saoirse Ronan, did you ever see Mary Queen of Scots?
I really, really wanted to.
I didn't get a chance to see it either, but I mean, like, that looked like a fantastic film as well.
Yeah, that looked really good. I missed it and then it just flew off my radar, but I really
Right.
do want to see it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my best comeback performer is going to be extremely cliche, but it has to be mentioned. Ben Affleck. He started off, in a couple of films. He was in the Kevin Smith movies, like Chasing Amy and Dogma, and he had a couple of movies like Armageddon. But he was never one of those actors that was really taken seriously, and then he got wrapped up in all those crazy things in the tabloids, all those women that he had relationships with. I mean, the whole thing with him and Jennifer Lopez was a hot mess, and then he comes out of nowhere and directs Argo.
Yeah.
Before that, he was directing Gone Baby Gone, and
Yeah.
he was in The Town, but those were two movies that not many people were really talking about much. But Argo got him noticed again as an actor, and not just that, a very serious actor. And he has definitely proven that he can be a great actor, because some of the films that he was in this past decade have been amazing. One was Gone Girl.
Yes, and he was fantastic in it.
Yeah, he's just really shown this. And I will say this, I think that he was the best on-screen Batman we ever got. I loved him as Batman in Batman v Superman, and I loved him in Justice League. I wish that company knew what the hell they were doing, because he really could have been Batman for like the next 10 years, and it's never going to happen now. And it's such a shame, because a lot of people say that about him. Like, they loved him as Batman and Bruce Wayne. He was the perfect marriage, and Warner Brothers just wasted it. It was a terrible thing. But he has proven that he can do amazing things in film, and I'm very glad that he did prove himself. So, who do you think was the best hidden talent of the last 10 years?
I think you might agree with, or at least agree with me in this one. Jordan Peele as a director. Starting off with Key and Peele, once again, not to say that comedy takes a lot less work than drama. I'm just saying that there is a difference in it. Starting off as a comedian on a sketch show, and then coming on to direct Get Out, the Twilight Zone reboot, and I haven't seen Us. I hear it's good.
Yeah,
I won't see it because I'm a coward. but Get Out blew me away. I was not expecting anything from Get Out. When I saw he was directing a horror film, I was like, okay, Jordan Peele, stick to comedy. You don't know what you're doing.
But he did something different. There has never been a horror / thriller / thought-provoking, uncomforting film before like Get Out.
Yes, exactly. And the way he was able to tie it into, because that's a lot what horror is. It's building off of social anxieties and tying it into his own experience with race, and like how race is dealt amongst liberals, which I think is incredibly interesting, especially as a Black woman, Black liberal myself. It's really interesting to see how he portrayed that and got into the sort of anxieties and fears around it. So good. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard like, oh, I voted for Obama, just right out of nowhere. Like, congratulations.
Well, my choice is someone who you definitely know by name, and chances are you may have seen one or more of her movies in the last 10 years. Carey Mulligan.
Okay, yes. I really like Carey Mulligan.
Was that one actress that is an amazing actress, but for some strange reason, no one is talking about how great she is.
You know what? I love her.
She's another very versatile actress. She's done so many different kinds of films, and yet, why is she not like of Meryl Streep status yet? Like, everybody should be talking about her, because the woman's an actress. She can do it.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you. And there are a lot of films that I didn't know she was in until I saw her in The Great Gatsby, and I was like, oh, she's really good.
Yeah.
And then she was in the 2005 version of Pride and Prejudice, which I didn't know. She's in all these other things, and yeah.
And the reason why I say Meryl Streep is because she was in a movie with Meryl Streep called Suffragette.
Yeah, I really want to see that one.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it yet, but it looks fantastic. She was also in the sequel to Wall Street. She played alongside Shia LaBeouf and Michael Douglas. And, you know, was that a movie that we needed to get? No, not necessarily. But again, a great performance. And like I said, I am absolutely surprised that nobody's talking about her because she's working and she's doing a pretty damn good job, which is why I feel that she is classified, to me at least, as a hidden talent. I believe she's even gotten an Oscar nomination or two, but still nobody's talking about her, which is so weird to me.
Yeah, I agree with that, 100%.
Okay, so now we're going to we've been talking about the best stuff, ladies and gentlemen, but now we're going to turn the tables, and I think this is where the fun's going to happen.
It's time to spill the tea.
My good friend Taylor, what was the worst movie of the last 10 years?
This was hard. I was sifting through all of the movies I disliked, and there were a lot of runners-up. Ghostbusters, Suicide Squad, Frozen 2, which we have discussed I really didn't like. But what I went with is Beauty and the Beast.
Oh
2017.
boy! I am actually so happy to hear that from you. I really am.
I absolutely hated this film, and the more I think about it, the more I hate it. And I think
you didn't need it. You didn't need it.
Did not need it.
You don't need any of these live-action Disney films. Maybe to a certain degree the Tim Burton Dumbo, because it's a Tim Burton movie, but nothing else. But none of these other ones, and maybe the Cinderella. Cinderella was good, actually.
I like Cinderella.
I like Cinderella.
This was a gross attempt to, I guess, respond to a lot of criticisms that really no one had, but Disney made up for some reason. Or at least they were listening to people who, for some reason, were over-analyzing it. Like, why are all of the things enchanted? Did he not have any? Like, no one cares. It's a fairy tale. You don't need to over-explain how the curse works. Most people watching it could use their brains and say, okay, well, it's a curse. That's all I need. The original Beauty and the Beast, I felt, while not actively trying to be feminist, one could read it as feminist. Belle was an independent woman who had her own brain, had her own ambitions, and so on. But this Belle is just the wokest, and I hated it. It's overcorrecting for something that I didn't think was needed. Like,
I think that was the reason why it was so bad. It was because it was Disney going woke. I mean, I knew that movie was doomed to failure. Before the movie comes out, they get up on their soapbox and say, ladies and gentlemen, we have a gay character in our movie. And
then he gets 2 seconds. Cowards.
And I think what's kind of funny is, like, when I was talking to my wife about that whole thing in the newspaper, she's like, wait, nobody knew that LeFou was gay for Gaston? Like, seriously?
Yeah, one that I think everyone knew that, or at least that was the easy one. They could have done Cogsworth and Lumiere, but Disney's scared because they don't want to lose, the homophobic market, and so they chicken out and just have LeFou dancing with a man for 2 seconds.
Well,
so they didn't even really commit to being woke, so it's just this weird in the middle thing.
Let me tell you.
Belle was already a strong female icon for me. Like, I based so much of my personality off of her.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they felt they needed to just change that for no reason.
And not just change that with an actress, but also the beauty of auto-tune for the songs.
God. Oh my God. And then just, I don't know, all the marketing around it, like Emma Watson isn't wearing a corset because corsets are sexist. And no, okay, they weren't. It was a fashion piece.
People don't seem to understand that, it's why Disney Plus is putting those warnings on their classics. Like, people need to understand there were certain things that happened in certain time periods. If we seriously teach younger generations that these things didn't exist, you're basically lying to them. People, if that's what you're doing to your kids, let me just say this flat out the bat right now, you're worse than Donald Trump.
I So the weird thing is, like, as a kid, and I don't know if you thought this when you were watching Beauty and the Beast, but as a kid, I never was like, I can't believe Belle's wearing a corset. Like, I didn't even, that didn't even come to mind.
No,
Like,
I didn't even know she was wearing one.
yeah, I didn't notice. I don't think anyone cared. This movie makes me angrier and angrier the more I think about it.
Yeah.
There were some things that I thought were nice once in a while, like sometimes the costume design is nice, and I do like that there are Black people in it, but that's like a bare minimum and like more of a personal thing.
Yeah, but you want to know something? We talked about that, my wife and I, as well. And it's also because of the fact that we have to remember this is a fairy tale. This is not a period piece. You could have blue people in your Beauty and the Beast story, and nobody will care. As long as the movie is good, nobody cares about what color skin your characters have. Just give me a good movie. Disney is already in trouble for butchering Star Wars. This is the least of their problems right now.
It's ridiculous. So
I don't
didn't
know.
need to go on and on about Beauty and the Beast. I could go on for centuries, but I want to know what yours was.
Oh, the worst movie of the decade was Sausage Party. I hated that movie to death.
I have not seen it.
Do me a favor, do not. It was an adult animated film, and I thought that it was the most disturbingly disgusting thing that I ever watched in my life. Granted, it's very politically incorrect, and as someone who is against PC culture, I adore politically incorrect. But this was not politically incorrect. This was just over the top for the sake of being over the top. People, what happens at the end of this movie, it might make you throw up in your mouth a little bit because it's just something you didn't need to see. It was, I remember going to see this movie. I had the choice of going to see Sausage Party, and I think the other movie was Florence Foster Jenkins. I should have seen Florence Foster Jenkins because, my God, this movie was such a terrible movie. I hated it so much.
I couldn't even watch it. The marketing for it was just so crass. And the thing that angered me was that they had these billboards up where like children could see them. Like, I don't think they're going to put two and two together, but even so, it was disgusting. I couldn't even see it after looking at like the marketing for it and all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even recall even laughing during this movie. It's supposed to be a comedy. It was one of the main reasons why I had said to people for so many years that I hated anything that was made by Judd Apatow or anything that was made by the people who were in the Judd Apatow movies. It was one of the reasons why I was saying for many years, and I still think this to this day, I think that Seth Rogen is extremely overrated. I really don't appreciate him all the time. There are a couple of times where I do find him funny. Like, I love him in Freaks and Geeks. I think he's great on that show. But there are just certain things that he does that I just don't care for. And this was just not a good movie. I didn't like it at all. So, unfortunately, we're just going to go from bad to worse. This one is called There Can Be Only One. What does that mean? It means that the first movie was fantastic. Why'd you have to make more? Because you just didn't hit the mark ever since. Taylor, what was yours that fit that category?
So again, I was stuck between two. It was either going to be the Frozen franchise, but this one I'm going with. The Fantastic Beasts franchise. The first film I absolutely loved. I had zero expectations, went in, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful film. I loved it. I saw it like 4 times in theaters. So good. Then the second one came out, and at least with Frozen 2, I could name things that I liked about the movie. There were some things that I liked. I can name absolutely 0 good things about Fantastic Beasts 2. 0. It was messy. The plot was bad. Nothing good happened to any of the 3 women of color in the film. Nothing good. And they introduced like sexual assault to the Harry Potter universe, which I didn't enjoy. Johnny Depp as Grindelwald was awful. That was not the right choice. Their cop-out with the whole Dumbledore-Grindelwald relationship was weird. And the ending was a mess. The whole film was a mess. And as a follow-up to a film that I think surprised a lot of people in how good it was, and in presenting this sort of unconventional hero in the first film, like Eddie Redmayne was playing Newt Scamander. I heard he was like playing him as like autistic or something, bringing this unlikely hero and making him strong and interesting and compassionate and compelling was, I thought, beautiful. And then this one was just such a disaster.
Well, you see, this is why I always say, especially when it comes to beloved franchises, people, when it's over, let the sleeping dogs lie. You can survive after a series of films has come to an end, because clearly when you scream and scream and scream, you want more, 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 and that person says, here's more. It almost never works.
Yep. Honestly, J.K. Rowling needs to just bathe in her piles of money and be
She wanted to. That's the thing. She wanted to. The fans just wouldn't leave her alone.
Yeah, honestly, like, I'm happy we got the first one. I'm happy to finally have a Hufflepuff hero. God, we needed one that didn't die. But yeah, I hated this movie.
I mean, look, I don't think that The Crimes of Grindelwald, I didn't think it was terrible, because I look at it the same way that I looked at Avengers Age of Ultron. It was a filler for a story that is going to continue and probably get better, because as Harry Potter fans, we know where this new franchise is going. So now it's just a matter of getting from point A to point B. And basically, we're departing from point A and we're traveling to point B. We just have to take it as it comes. We got to roll with the punches here. I think, however, the third movie will most likely build on what Crimes of Grindelwald gave us, and most likely give us some answers to some of those questions. And I also feel that when that franchise is officially over, we will look back on all the films, and probably the Crimes of Grindelwald will be appreciated more. A perfect example that I can use as a comparison is, take a look at what's going on with Star Wars now, and look at how so many people are now going back to episodes 1, 2, and 3 and saying, wow, these aren't so bad as I thought they were.
I hope that's the case with this.
Me too.
I hope I didn't waste my time by sitting in a theater, but we'll see. I'm still going to continue with the series. It's just, it was such a disappointing follow-up.
Well, I think you might actually be upset with my choice.
Okay.
There can only be one Iron Man. I thought the sequels were terrible. I love the first movie. And I think the problem with the second and third Iron Man is the fact that they were all over the place, and they didn't give us good stories, and they didn't give us strong villains. I think that Justin Hammer was a terrible villain. And don't get me wrong, Sam Rockwell is a great actor. Terrible villain. And the Crimson Dynamo, or whoever was Mickey Rourke's role, or Whiplash, or whatever, he was not really significant. And then when you get to the third Iron Man, you see that twist with the Mandarin was something that comic book fans, particularly Iron Man fans, because there's a lot of people who read Iron Man comics and know his arch nemesis is the Mandarin. And now people are even more angry that the real Mandarin is finally showing up in Shang-Chi, in that Marvel film that's coming. Like, well, why couldn't you just give us the real Mandarin in the third Iron Man, and you could have easily made Shang-Chi as well and had the Mandarin in that movie? Why did you have to totally screw it up in Iron Man 3? It was terrible.
So didn't like the second Iron Man. I think I like the first and third, but I do get why people don't like the third. As someone who has never read an Iron Man comic, it was just like, okay, well, it's fine.
Yeah,
but I totally get why fans would not like the third one.
You see, it was also a very interesting thing because it was the first film in the MCU Phase 2. So the fact that we had gotten very strong films in Phase 1. I mean, I know that you're not the biggest fan of the first 4, but I like the first 4. And I also am not upset to say that I like the second 4 as well. I do. because I like the whole concept of the ether and the alternate dimensions and all of that stuff. I like that stuff. And I'm a huge fan of Kat Dennings in those movies. I think she's so funny. But for me, you know, to start off a continuing story after the Avengers and give us something that is not even good, it's tolerable, it's okay. I mean, thank God we got Captain America the Winter Soldier and Guardians of the Galaxy in that phase as well, because Captain America the Winter Soldier is the best film in that phase. I don't care what anybody says. It's the best MCU film in my eyes right now, period. I think it's better. I think it's better. I can go on for so many reasons why I think it's better than Endgame. But Endgame is great too, but I think it's better because it's just darker. And I think that we're going to get a very similar film to Winter Soldier and Black Widow, which is why I'm very excited for it. But yeah, I feel that they destroyed the Iron Man franchise as a solo franchise with the follow-ups to the first one, because the first Iron Man started the whole thing, and it was great. But they did really bad with those last two.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one is called Third Time is Not a Charm. What does that mean? It means that we got a great first installment. We even got a decent sequel. But then when they tried to turn it into a trilogy, it fell flat. Taylor, what did you say?
Okay, so I'm a cheater, and you may not particularly agree with this one, but I am going with the Hunger Games franchise.
Okay.
And part of that, I think the biggest mistake is splitting Mockingjay into two parts. I know it's technically not a trilogy, it's a saga, or I don't know what it's called when it's four, quadrology, but splitting the two up was, I think, the biggest mistake. And I think it made the franchise weaker as a whole. There's a reason people talk about the first and second one, but not as many people talk about Mockingjay Part 1 and 2. And that's because in the books, as well as the first film, Katniss is going through severe depression and PTSD. And that's not, unfortunately, it's not always as interesting when you have an action film, a film that relies so heavily on action. And if they had combined the two, I think they could have done it a lot more effectively. They could have saved a lot of money. And I think by the time the last one came out, people weren't as into the Hunger Games anymore. It kind of hit its stride, worn itself out, and people were like, I'll see it, but not rushing to the theaters, especially since the first film was strong. It was a really good adaptation.
That's
and
correct.
The second one was a fantastic adaptation. Honestly, I wouldn't have been minded if it had gotten a couple of Oscar nominations, maybe not Best Picture, but like special effects or
for sure,
set design,
sound effects, editing, all that stuff, costumes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, I'm going to throw one out that you might have actually completely forgot about, and maybe it's just because of the fact that people realized that it was not needed. Little Fockers, the third installment of the Meet the Parents franchise.
Oh yeah! Oh my God, I haven't seen that one.
Because
I've only seen the first two.
See, I'm not a big fan of this franchise to begin with, but Meet the Parents people loved. People also loved Meet the Fockers because you had Dustin Hoffman and Barbara Streisand playing Ben Stiller's character's parents. But why did you need to make a third one?
No one wanted it.
Exactly. That's why I think it's because of the fact that it didn't do well in the box office. Nobody who liked the franchise really went to go see it or even cared about it. And that's why I felt that, you didn't have to. You didn't have to, but you did anyway.
They could have left it as is, and I don't think anyone would have had any qualms.
Exactly. Okay, so now we're going to be going into the people who are in these bad movies. And we're going to start off with the actor who has overstayed its welcome. Taylor, who'd you choose?
So this was a tough one because I don't know if I can name anyone specifically who 100% fits this category. And this is very much personal taste.
That's what it's supposed to be.
Yep. Scarlett Johansson. I don't think she's I don't think she's that great an actress. Part of it is that she just opens her mouth and doesn't have any sense of PR.
Wow.
I think that's going to hurt her career down the line. But for the most part, I just never thought she was that great an actress. She was fine as Black Widow, but she doesn't really stand out. Like, the character itself is interesting, but her as an actor, I think you could replace her with most other actresses and still have the same effect, if not better.
May I make a suggestion then?
Yes.
Have you seen her?
I've only seen clips, but I haven't seen all of it.
She is not there in physical form, but with just her voice, it's definitely something fresh and new.
Okay. I have
And-
the DVD, actually.
And have you seen Lucy?
Lucy is... Okay, which one is that?
Lucy is the science fiction film. It's directed by the guy who directed The Fifth Element and The Professional. She plays a woman who is like given an implant or like some kind of a drug that makes her like a superhero kind of thing,
like
a
unlocks
robot.
100% of her like brain capacity, right? I heard it was really bad.
You know something? I like it. It's a very underappreciated science fiction film. And through that, you know how a lot of people say that, I'm not going to say that you're wrong, because there's a lot of people that say the problem with Scarlett Johansson is that she's very robotic.
Yeah.
Lucy taps into that personality trait of hers, and she sells it.
Okay, then I'm going to have to watch that, because other than that, the only performance that I remember liking her in is, I forgot her name, but she was in The Other Boleyn Girl as Anne Boleyn's sister.
Okay.
That was fine, but she didn't really have to do much.
Okay.
Natalie Portman stole it.
And a lot of people don't say great things about Natalie Portman either. But then again, but then she went on to do Black Swan, and the rest is history.
Exactly.
Yeah. I went a little bit cliche in this one as well. I think that the person who has overstayed her welcome without a doubt is Angelina Jolie.
Okay, yeah, I get that.
She got that Academy Award with Girl Interrupted, but for the last years, she has just been pushing herself, thinking that she really is one of those truly great Hollywood elites, and she's not.
Mm-mm.
I think one of the biggest things that was the nail in the coffin for me was the film Unbroken. It could have been something so great, but it was boring as hell.
Is that the movie she directed?
Yes.
I hated that movie.
It could have been, it was such a great story, and she butchered it.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think I've seen almost all of the films she's directed. I didn't like a single one.
You want to know, and you want to know something? The only movie where I actually enjoyed her performance was Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and that's not even a great movie.
I haven't seen that. I like her in Kung Fu Panda as Tigress.
Well, yeah, you know what? I will also give her a little bit to her credit. As an animated voice, she does well, because she's also really funny in Shark Tale.
Right, she was in Shark Tale. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you about her in Kung Fu Panda. She is funny as Tigress. I do like her as Tigress. But yeah, she has not wowed me. And the thing is, she believes that she can wow everybody, and she doesn't.
No, honestly, I definitely agree with that.
Okay, so the next one is, who are you and why are you acting?
Okay.
You're going to like my answer, by the way. At least I think you will.
Interesting. So mine, I need to preface this by saying this is someone I admire very, very much. They are one of my favorite musicians, Beyonce.
Fair enough.
Her in The Lion King was so bad. She's not an actress. She isn't. I have heard her voice act in Epic, in The Lion King. I know she's acted in a few things. I can't watch it. She's one of my favorite musicians. I am a huge Beyonce fan. No, she's not a great actress.
Okay. Let me ask you, because you already threw this ball into my court. Do you want to guess who you think my answer is?
Is it Jennifer Lawrence?
You were way too close. Way too close.
Oh. Ooh. Okay, who?
It's Kristen Stewart. I hate her to death.
Interesting.
I still, even though there are some people that say she is good in this movie and that movie and whatnot, like, I don't see it. I think that she has no personality. She just blankly stares at the camera, and people think that she is God's gift to the world. I don't see it. I think she's a terrible actress.
I haven't seen any of her more recent films. I Twilight. I've seen her in Twilight, and I will say I think she does get a bad rap for Twilight because it's not like she had a great character to go off of anyway with Bella. She doesn't exactly leap off the page. So I think she did the best with what was given her, but I do see either why people like her or why people dislike her. I think she's a very polarizing actress.
I swear to God, every time I see her in a movie, or even when I see her being interviewed, I swear to God she's stoned on something. I don't know. I always think that she's doing something high.
Yeah, I can see why she is incredibly off-putting.
So even though you're the one that goes first in this, I am going to go first on the next one because you actually got the answer, and that was the actor who is starting to slip. And I really believe at this point in time it is Jennifer Lawrence because she was doing so well. I mean, The Hunger Games was her big break. I love her as Mystique in the recent X-Men films. I really do. And
she's really good.
And the role that got her Oscar, Silver Linings Playbook. What a great role. But she has not given us anything good since.
Do you want to hear? That is what I chose for the category.
Wow, we actually matched.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Wow. So she started off the decade really strong. I don't know if you've seen Winter's Bone.
No, but I heard such amazing things about it. That was her first Academy Award nomination.
Exactly. It's really slow, but it's incredibly good. It takes a while to build up, but I really liked it, and she was fantastic in it. The Hunger Games, I think, surprised everyone.
Absolutely.
She wasn't even I was in the Hunger Games fandom when people were trying to figure out casting. She didn't even make any of the lists people chose. So the fact that she broke out, that was really good. Silver Linings Playbook, fantastic.
Yeah, what a great movie. And that movie, even though it's so funny, I haven't seen it since I saw it in theaters. But that movie is actually very near and dear to my heart because that is the first movie I ever took my wife out to see on a date.
Aw, that's so cute.
That was one of our first, that was like our fourth date. And I think what's actually kind of funny is when my mother-in-law, when she asked us at that time, what movie did you take her to see? And I said, Silver Linings Playbook. She goes, really? She's like, that's a little bit of like an upper echelon kind of movie to take a girl to. Like, I thought you'd take her to like one of those stupid action movies. Like, nope, I know my movies. I got some good taste.
It's a really good film. I really liked it.
And even though it wasn't the best film, I thought she was very good in American Hustle.
I haven't seen that, but I heard she was good.
Yeah,
I liked
same
her
director.
as Mystique.
Yeah, same director as Silver Lining Playbook. Yeah. Yeah, she was very good as Mystique.
I heard Mother was really bad, and I haven't really heard her in anything as good as Silver Linings Playbook.
Yeah,
I honestly think she's getting replaced with Emma Stone, honestly.
I don't think that she's exactly someone to compare her to because she's in a lot of different kinds of movies. I mean, like with Jennifer Lawrence, it's like, Joy didn't do so well. People thought that Passengers was going to be the next big movie that she was in, and it ended up being a flop. I felt bad for Chris Pratt, to be honest with you. But, I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong. The talent is there. I just don't understand what's happening with her right now. I really don't.
I think part of it is her PR team or her publicist team crafted this persona that I think started to really grate on people. And people aren't as fond of anymore. This persona of her being like so down to earth that every interview she's in, every red carpet, they have to emphasize how down to earth she is. And now people are just tired of it. Yeah. And they're kind of tired of her.
Yeah. I actually just want to throw something out just because. So do you want to know who I thought was the actor who filled this category when I did this whole list for myself before this, like last decade?
Who?
I thought it was, and I'm mentioning this now because of what's happening in about a week. I chose Adam Sandler, but right now he's about to be in a movie that might get him an Oscar nomination called Uncut Gems.
Really?
They say that he's not funny in this movie. He's supposed to be a compulsive gambler who works in New York's Diamond District, and basically people are saying that this movie with Adam Sandler is going to blow people's minds out of the water.
So, can I say something? I like Adam Sandler better when he's not being funny. I do not find him funny at all. I never did. But I don't know if you've seen Punch Drunk Love.
I did not, but I know Punch Drunk Love, and a lot of people also talked a great deal about Spanglish.
I haven't seen Spanglish, but Punch Drunk Love really surprised me. I had to watch it for a film class, and when I heard we were watching Adam Sandler, I was, you know, being my pretentious film student self, I was like, oh, that's so lowbrow. I dare say I shan't watch it. I shan't enjoy it. And then I
Yes.
really liked it. It
Yeah,
was
the only
good.
thing
He
that
wasn't funny at all.
Did you have those little spectacles on a stick while you were saying that with a cup of tea in your hand?
I had like one of those pipes, and I was like, oh, I dare say.
With the harpsichord in the background while
Exactly.
you're talking.
My good lord.
Oh dear old bean, I dare say. Yeah, no, it's just like, it's really nice to know that he might actually be doing something good. But yeah, I hope that Jennifer Lawrence gets back up on her feet, because I do like a lot of her work, and I'd like to see her get better at it, you know?
I agree. I don't want her to go away.
Even when you take a look at X-Men The Dark Phoenix, she's not even great in that movie either.
I haven't seen that one, but the
yeah.
first X-Men, or not Origins,
X-Men First Class, yes.
I really liked her in those.
Yeah. Okay, so we're done with the best and the worst of the decade, everybody, but we still have 2 more categories to talk about, and that is what we think is going to be happening in the next 10 years. So it's 2 specific categories, and we're going to start off with the next big franchise. Taylor, knowing what we are about to receive in film, especially considering that 2020 seems to be a very big year for film, what do you think is going to be the next big film franchise going into next decade?
Well, I decided to go with one that I had mentioned earlier, and because their first installment was in this decade, but I think it has a capacity to branch out, I'm going with Into the Spider-Verse.
Okay.
I think the concept of introducing a bunch of different spider people opens up the possibility of TV shows, films, so on and so forth. I think people really like Spider-Gwen. I would like to see a movie about her. I want to see more of Miles Morales. I know it's already getting a sequel, so I think that's going to be a big franchise if they can keep the writing and everything else in check. I think it's going to be big.
Well, I'll tell you the truth. Spider-Man definitely ended this decade in a big way, because after Spider-Man 3, a lot of us were disappointed and we thought that he was done. But when the MCU got their hands on him, they gave birth to the Spider-Man that even, don't get me wrong, I like Tobey Maguire, and I think that Sam Raimi's first 2 Spider-Man films are great. But the Andrew Garfield films are nothing special. But Tom Holland as Peter Parker is the best Spider-Man right now. And Tom Holland is now one of the its in Hollywood today. He's doing everything from MCU to Disney Pixar films, and he's about to be in a DreamWorks animated film with Will Smith called Spies in Disguise, which looks so bad, but for some strange reason, Will Smith and Tom Holland together just seems like it could be really, really cute. But yeah. Spider-Man and Venom and Into the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man is back on top. And I am praying, because after that post-credit scene in Spider-Man Far From Home, which made so many Spider-Man fans happy, I just want to see Kevin Feige do right with Spider-Man, because I want Spider-Man versus the Sinister Six. I want to see Spider-Man encounter Venom and Carnage. I would love to see, whether it's Disney or Sony, I would love to see them show me some other things. And look, I know that everybody loves the relationship between him and Zendaya, but the question is going to be, will they bring out Gwen Stacy? Will they bring us the original Mary Jane Watson? Like, what are we going to see moving forward? It's going to be big, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I think that the next big franchise is actually a franchise that has been around in the world of science fiction for many years, but a lot of us cannot get on board, even when the movie came out in 1984. Some of us still were not able to get on board, but Denis Villeneuve is now in the director's chair, and next year we are going to get a brand new version of Frank Herbert's Dune.
Oh, really?
And when I take a look at this cast, I'm like, if this film bombs at the box office and a franchise cannot be built, then you know, we've officially lost hope for Dune, because I will be honest, I don't like the book at all. I didn't even finish the book. The movie, I think it's more visual. You got to have visuals. There's so much potential, but the movie in '84 was a bust. But can I just read you some of this cast?
Yeah, go for it.
Rebecca Ferguson, Timothy Chalamet, Jason Momoa, Zendaya, Oscar Isaac, Dave Bautista, Josh Brolin, Stellan Skarsgård, Javier Bardem. Do I need to continue?
That sounds amazing.
Listen to all these names, and they're all going to be in this new version of Dune. And the director of Arrival and Blade Runner 2049 is directing this film. Taylor, I think they're going to get it right.
I hope so. And isn't it going to be like a two-parter, right?
Yeah, because again, it's a franchise builder. There's lots of Dune books. And, you know, as someone who would like to see great science fiction do well, especially now that the technology has caught up to the concept, because there's also been a rumor of one of the greatest science fiction stories ever written by Isaac Asimov possibly becoming a television series, and that is Foundation. People love that story, and I think that as a television show it can work, because I don't know if you're watching it right now, but one of the hottest new shows on television now is His Dark Materials. It's fantastic.
I really want to see it.
It is absolutely a fantastic show, and it's nice to see some of these other book franchises. And it's also really nice to know that television, even though this is not a television topic of discussion today, that is coming soon, but the fact that a lot of these science fiction and fantasy stories, they decided maybe it's not good for the big screen, because you can't there's so much in this, you can't pack it into a 2-hour movie. Maybe we have to go to television. And look at how successful it is. Like Westworld. Look at how successful that is. Look at how successful Stranger Things is, even though it's not based on any books or anything. But it's just showing you that sometimes you got to really think about what you have with your source material and figure out what medium you want to put it on. But I think that Dune is made for the big screen. And I think with this cast and this director, I think we're going to see a good one. And I'm really excited for 2020.
Honestly, I would watch Dune, but that cast, I have no idea what it's about, but I would watch it with the cast.
Absolutely. I mean, even though Sting was in the 1984 movie, it's got a cult following. It does, but it's so weird for a movie for the time, you know?
Yeah.
So, and the last question is the best up-and-coming actor, and I actually have an actor and an actress. So if you didn't have both, I'm sorry. I should have been more explanatory. But if you can think of somebody on the fly, if you want to do an actor and an actress, feel free.
I definitely can. I'll start with the one I chose, and that's the actress, Zendaya. Okay. I watched her. Because when her Disney Channel show was on Shake It Up, my youngest sister was still watching Disney Channel. So I saw her on there, and Disney Channel I don't think does the best job directing their actors for the most part. So I didn't really expect anything of her. The show ended, I was like, okay, well, she's just going to go the way the rest of the Disney Channel stars go.
She has surprised us.
Yeah, the fact that she was in The Greatest Showman, the Spider-Man movies. She's going to be in... you said she was going to be in Dune, right?
She's going to be in Dune.
Dune. She has Euphoria, which I haven't seen, but I've heard.
Yeah, I heard
it's
not my cup of tea, but I hear there's a big following for her.
Exactly, and I think we're going to see really good things from her. I think we're going to see her in more films, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the next decade she might even get an Oscar nomination or like a nod.
There's a very big possibility of that, and quite frankly. Since we did bring up the remakes of Disney classics, if they ever decided to recreate and make a live-action version of Atlantis: The Lost Empire, the only people that I see as Milo and Kida is Tom Holland and Zendaya.
Okay, I 100% agree with that. And going off of that, for the actor, I'm going with Tom Holland.
No surprise.
On the fly, honestly, he has also surprised me. I didn't know who he was when he took over as Spider-Man. And I think Spider-Man Homecoming is good. I don't think it's great. It's not one of my favorite Marvel films.
It's fun. It's fun.
It's cute. He is the best part of it. He really makes the role.
He's charming.
He sells it. He sells it.
He's
like,
charming. That's why he's such a great actor, because he's sort of is like what Jennifer Lawrence used to be.
Exactly. He even in his interviews, he comes across as like really sweet and likable. And I don't know if you've seen the clip of him doing Umbrella, but it's fantastic.
Oh, yes, I have. Yes, I have.
He's not afraid to like make fun of himself and like get out there. And I kind of think he could be like Eddie Redmayne, sort of doing the sort of charming roles and maybe moving on to more serious things. But I like him, and I think we're going to see great things from him.
I think that, you know, being a part of the MCU, he couldn't have had a better group of mentors. Anthony Mackie, Chris Pratt, Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, he's taking a lot from them. That's why, and that's why I think that he has the ability to become a Chris Pratt-esque actor in the future, because he's being modest a lot. And that's why I think Chris Pratt is such a likable guy, because he's modest.
And I think that's a really big thing. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen the clip where he was signing autographs and a bunch of people were pushing this young girl, and they caught him on tape, like screaming at the guys and saying like, I got you, and being super, like, stuff like that really wins over people, you know?
I personally loved about a year or two ago where he made a speech at the MTV Movie Awards, and he actually said to everybody, like, he gave people his 10 things for success in life, and the last thing that he said was show grace. He said, show grace, show respect. And he wasn't afraid to actually say pray. You know, he's a religious man, and he said, there's nothing wrong with praying. It'll make you feel, he said, because it makes you feel good. And I thought that was really nice.
I think he's incredibly charming. People love him. I'm excited to see where he takes his career.
Yeah, I will agree with you with Tom Holland and Zendaya, but I am a little bit different. Ironically, one of my picks is actually part of the MCU, so I'll go with her first, Letitia Wright. Shuri was fantastic. She was the reason why I adore Black Panther.
She was my first choice. Not first choice, but first one.
I want her in more things. I think she's got some serious acting chops, and I want more.
I loved her. I really did. And I actually wouldn't mind if they did a sort of spin-off with her.
I just love her as Shuri because she was such a spunky little kid. And I love the fact that she was not afraid to stand up to her brother, who's the king. And like I said, I just feel like, even though it's the most cliche part of the whole movie, I love it when she goes, what are those, when she looks at Black Panther's shoes. I just thought that was so funny. Or the fact that, like, she really is the brain, or the fact that, you know, what people were kind of craving was people want to see a Spider-Man movie where she teams up with Spider-Man, and they go, and they solve an adventure together. They think that the two of them together in a room would be magical, because the two of them are just these super geniuses.
Honestly, I agree with that. I would pay to see that. I think that's great. And I think the actress did a really great job. And, you know, I would like to see her in more stuff.
Yeah, and the best up-and-coming actor, he's already making a name for himself, but the problem is he hasn't been in one of those movies that the overall movie-going public is going to go see, and that's Timothée Chalamet.
I knew you were going to say that.
I love him. I have seen him in Lady Bird, which I loved. I thought that Beautiful Boy was one of the most incredibly heartbreaking films I ever saw. I loved his performance in Call Me By Your Name, and I seriously believe that Dune is going to be his breakout. I think that that's going to be the movie that makes him the household name that he should be already. That's going to be the movie that brings him into the mainstream, gives him all the big blockbuster projects, and Timothée Chalamet is going to be one of the most well-known actors in Hollywood. He's got so many years ahead of him. For the amount of time that he has been in Hollywood already, he has already shown us that he's got the stuff.
Yeah.
But he's just got, it's like one of the main reasons why I personally think that Black Panther was such an important film. That I think that it was worthy of Best Picture that year? No. But the reason why I liked that movie and why I felt it was so important was because I knew who Lupita Nyong'o was. I knew who Forrest Whitaker was. I knew Michael B. Jordan. I knew Chadwick Boseman. You know, I had seen them in all of these great movies like 42, 12 Years a Slave, but we never saw them in a movie that the average movie-going person goes to see. It's great to see them in Oscar-winning roles in great dramatic films, but they were never in any of these fun, family-oriented films, and Black Panther was that movie for them.
I agree with that, and Timothée Chalamet, I've only seen him in Lady Bird, and I think part of the reason why I appreciate his talent, but I don't particularly care for him, is just the character he was playing in Lady Bird.
Yeah, he doesn't play a great, he's an asshole in that movie.
Yeah, and I think part of the thing with Lady Bird is, like, I'm still young enough to sort of relate to it, and I remember that jerk with no personality that I had a crush on in high school, and I'm like, nope, can't do it, I'm cringing, I can't watch him.
No, I mean, see him, I will definitely recommend, I wouldn't recommend Beautiful Boy, even though it is a fantastic movie. I don't want to put you into like a horrible mood for the rest of the day because it's a super sad movie. But
I really want to see it. Steve Carell's in it too, right?
Oh yeah, and he's fantastic as well, but I'm telling you, he's great in Call Me By Your Name.
I've heard good things about Call Me By Your Name. That's another one I think I need to work myself up to, but I do want to see him in Little Women, which is kind of
yeah, that's you know what, I completely forgot about that. He's going to be in this movie as well,
and Saoirse Ronan's going to be in it with him as well. So
yep, and Emma Watson, hopefully a movie that's better than Beauty and the Beast.
She has to wear a corset this time, so I don't know.
Hermione, how far you've come. Well, anyway, that's actually going to wrap up this first of 4 installments of the Best and Worst of the Decade series. Taylor, thank you for joining me. This was an excellent conversation, and I gotta tell you, your picks were A-okay. Can't complain about your stuff.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I loved discussing all of this with you, and I now have another list of movies I need to watch.
I'm glad that you do. And guys, you know, I'm sorry that we're not broadcasting this live, but please, you know, you now know what we discussed. Throw down in the box below what you thought were some of your favorites and some of the worst of the decade in your eyes, and what do you think is going to be some of the big breakouts of the decade ahead. So thank you very much, everybody, for watching, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the next episode. Hey, thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. If you're new here and want to see more of what my channel has to offer, please click on the link to my last video, or hit that subscribe button to be kept up to date with all of my uploads. Content of all sorts is posted here quite often, so trust me, you do not want to fall behind. I will see you in the comments, and actions speak louder than words.